from Iran, going back a decade plus, emphatically stating that NATO and Israel were cutting off the flow of precipitation to Iran. And let's plug this in, going all the way back 64 years to President Lyndon Johnson in 1962. This is the beginning 30 seconds of every weekly geoengineeringwatch.org update on our site, all news. First 30 seconds is film footage, Lyndon Johnson stating on film, on the record, that we had the power to control the world's cloud layer then, and he who controls the weather controls the world. Why? Because he who controls the weather can control the flow of precipitation to any country, anywhere, how toxic that rain is, how much rain falls or doesn't. Thus, they can destabilize food supplies. Thus, they can destabilize populations. 40 years, the Iranian climate science meteorological community has stated that NATO is cutting off their precipitation. They're not guessing. They have incredibly sophisticated weather monitoring facilities, just like we have. There's no speculation here. They're cutting off precipitation.
What are the mechanics of that, Dean?
Yeah, that's a good question. How does that work?
Before we get to the U.S. piece of this and the storm, I want to continue on this line of thought. But what are the mechanics of us just cutting it off? I know what Lyndon Johnson said, of course, in Vietnam, and how we used
cloud seeding
to actually flood the troops. But how do we cut it off?
Climate intervention, aka weather warfare operations, are far more effective at eliminating and dispersing precipitation than augmenting it.
Wow.
They're doing the same. They've done the same thing to the U.S. West Coast. Going back over a decade, my presentations, Engineered Drought Catastrophe, Target California. We can speculate on the agendas and objectives, and there are many, all of them nefarious. They're doing the same thing here, but the mechanisms by which they can completely cut off precipitation by the manipulation of atmospheric pressure zones, high pressure domes, which are exactly what ionosphere heater facilities like HAARP create. HAARP is a weapon of mass destruction. It's one of about 100 ionosphere heaters around the globe. These facilities, and this is not speculation either, this is science, study, confirmed fact. They, in the case of HAARP, can transmit 3.6 million watts of power to the ionosphere, electrically charged ionosphere. That's a frequency transmission. That causes an electrical chain reaction, superheats that part of the atmosphere, expanding it up and down. The downward push forms a high-pressure dome. Nothing can enter that. No moisture can enter that. It spins around it in the northern hemisphere. That creates a clockwise spin. So what we have happening right now, I'll weave all this together. The high-pressure dome in the west is spinning all the moisture clockwise up and over the western U.S. They're chemically nucleating it the whole way, spins it back down into the eastern U.S. They combine that with a flow of moisture from the record warm Gulf of Mexico. Since when do winter storms come from the record warm Gulf of Mexico? And they combine those two. And in the transition zone, you have now thunder snow, you have ice storms everywhere because this chemically nucleated material hits the ground before it sets up. These are patented processes, by the way. So back to Natalie's question, how do they cut off precipitation? That high pressure dome, when you're manipulating atmospheric pressure zones, you can cut off moisture from ever even entering a part of the world. Second method, if they overseed with condensation nuclei that's too small, particles that are too small to allow the raindrops to combine and form, what you get is these featureless skies that looks like it should rain, but nothing falls out. Again, those are two methods with which they can completely cut off precipitation to an area for as long as they want. These are patented processes. They've done it to Iran for decades. They're doing it to the U.S. So you end up with these drought deluge scenarios. And the crown jewel weapon for the controllers, Natalie and Clayton, is that they can blame all of this on nature.
Well, don't you hate when people